Everybody, thank you for this talk. We're about to show you a very cool project that is exciting for two organizations on stage. We are Clickspring Design and Sequin AR, two industry leaders in different and complementary specialties. Clickspring, if you guys ever watch sports or the news nationally, we do set design and larger architectural environments for ESPN, CNN, NBC, Fox, and increasingly internationally. And Dan can tell you a little bit about Sequin AR.
Thank you. Yes, Sequin AR, we are a virtual production company. We do lots of different stuff with Unreal Engine. All of our projects usually turn out to be first of its kind. We did a big project with Madonna where we had multiple Madonnas on stage. That was pretty new at the time. We did the Mariah Carey Christmas special, built out the sets for that. That was 12 sets in I think about 12 weeks that got made during the pandemic, so it was a huge undertaking there. And then we did this great project for Viacom 18, working with our partners Clickspring, that we will get into, but another kind of first of its kind for virtual production.
So I think we just want to start running this reel, which is going to play over our shoulder. It's about 5 minutes long, so you're going to see it a few times, and we're going to talk a little bit about the pieces in it. But to set the stage, welcome to Mumbai. This was a couple of weeks ago, the launch of IPL Cricket. Any cricket fans? Any cricket fans? I'm hearing crickets. This was a over-the-top broadcast on an app called GeoCinema. It was part of a Viacom 18 funded broadcast that was specific to the IPL cricket tournament, which has just gotten underway. The broadcaster had no time, but big aspirations, and they wanted to do something a little bit different at the perfect timing for both of these two organizations. They had physical studios, but they wanted to think about what their broadcast could be as an expansive, what they call metaverse-inspired environment. All of this delivered over an app that they also owned called GeoCinema. On a subscription basis, they saw 111 million individual logins on opening day. They had over 2.4 billion minutes watched. And that was the first match. So viewers were treated to something that was big, in their faces, dynamic, bombastic, and featuring content in ways that they were not used to seeing. Dan, do you want to, or Nia as well, there's a really interesting component about how traditional broadcast studios like Clickspring is used to working with melds with a big Unreal Engine fueled, real-time rendered, virtually produced series of environments that's part of a big metropolis floating off the coast of Mumbai.
Thank you. Yeah, so the big thing with this project and the big innovation, one of the big innovations, was like Chris was saying, that the idea was it was a complex. There were multiple sets that were built, virtual sets, there were physical sets that were built, but it was all supposed to take place inside of this big complex. And Clickspring had designed the whole thing, built it out so that everything made sense logically where it was. We took their designs and their files and translated them into Unreal, built out our virtual set, multiple virtual sets, built out the complex. We have the Mumbai skyline. Our team was using geographical data to build out the topography that's actually there, build out the skyline, put the entire complex out on the water with moving water that was moving in real time. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how they wanted the complex to feel alive and not like a flat set, like a virtual set. It was supposed to be something that was physically happening in this complex. So that was the idea, that there was going to be these multiple sets, and it was all going to be individual sets that they were broadcasting on. It was going to be all of a piece. I'm going to turn it over to Nina to talk a little bit about the design of that.
Yeah, so I think what's probably the most important, or I would argue is the most important, is kind of the step that we're seeing in terms of virtual engagement specific to broadcast, right? So everyone wants to dip their toes into virtual reality, into metaverse spaces. And this project was kind of a first opportunity for Clickspring and Sequin to work together to create a massive sports arena that offered GeoCinema the opportunity to dip their toes into virtual experience while also having the safety of a built reality studio that they felt comfortable with, right? So it's always a bit of a risk when you're jumping into virtual because there's a lot of new systems, there's a lot of new technology, there's a lot of new ways that talent have to engage with the virtual spaces. So this for us as designers was an amazing stretch for our architectural muscles to build a space that is in virtual, but based off of practicality, probably could be a built reality with a few concessions, right? So what you're seeing is this expansive arena that has built realities baked into the large scale arena. So it offers a way to enter into the virtual space with almost a safety net of a physical background. I'm going to pass it off to Chris, who has a little bit more to say about the actual design process, but ultimately a really wonderful stretch for us.
So you look at all that, you hear all the words. Obviously, the finished product is this sprawling, impressive thing. But how do you get there? The answer to that is part of the thing that makes the project novel, especially as VR and extended sets became more and more ubiquitous with broadcasts. You would also see from a designer's perspective a siloing of the creative processes. For example, at Clickspring, we may be called in to do a set design. We're very good at that. We will deliver a sensitive set and know as part of the design brief that there's going to be either a cyclorama or some sort of virtual set extension built into it. And then the client may hire a company to do that, like Dan's company, Sequin. But this client fused the two together at the origin of creative. So when we were designing, we had the ability to anticipate participating with Sequin AR. And the actual technical ability for Sequin to elevate what we produced as visualizations and animations in just a twin motion based rendering process was elevated in Unreal, not just as a visualization tool, but also as the end deliverable for them to run their virtual productions. That consolidation of both of those services was the efficiency that actually made this project possible. This entire creative process and technical deployment happened in about 6 months total, with the majority of the final work happening in the back half of the schedule. So the client in this case actually didn't have enough time to do 2 separate processes with 2 separate teams. And that efficiency that we honed in developing this kind of big, broad environment is something that Clickspring and Sequin are hitting the ground running with in future scopes, which actually saves the client's money and saves the project overall time, and ultimately leads to this holistic blend of the Unreal virtual elements and then the physical broadcast studios. So the entire output is pretty cohesive as an aesthetic. The technical leveraging that Sequin was so instrumental in providing is something that Dan can also kind of go into.
So, like Chris was saying, this project could not have happened without the partnership that we had, the synergy between Sequin, Clickspring, and Viacom 18 and GeoCinema. What normally happens is, from the virtual production side, we'll get a design, we'll start going into it, we'll start building it out in Unreal, and there's always some issue, right? And there's always a bottleneck where so-and-so is not getting back to me, or we're asking a question that the design firm just doesn't understand because the way it's built physically is different than Unreal, etc. The great thing here is that never happened. There was never a time when there was a bottleneck. There was never a stoppage of work because we were getting the designs from Clickspring. We started building them out, and if there were any issues, of which there were very few, we'd go back to them, get immediate response. They would change something on their side. They would send a new asset. Just constant movement, constant going forward, which was the only way we were going to hit the deadline that we needed to hit. The other part of that was Viacom 18 had really thought through and worked with Clickspring in terms of what they wanted. They knew exactly what they wanted, which is another thing that often can lead us into trouble where we're building it out and we go back to them and say, all right, we're halfway done. You know, what do you want to have happen here? And it's clear that they have not given it any thought. They had worked with Clickspring. Everything had been worked out. Clickspring on their side has licensed architects, right? So they wanted something that was going to logically make sense. When we got the files, with the way everything was built out, it made perfect sense. Everything fit in logically. And so it was super easy to then just put it all together, put it into Unreal, put it back out, and get it up and running. This, I think, normally the design and the Unreal builds for virtual production are treated as two separate things, and it just slows things down. It just takes more time. It just costs more money. So it worked out perfectly here. This is a perfect test case, and I think we are in agreement that this is definitely a way forward for not only big, ambitious projects like this, but for even smaller, more modest, or your normal sort of production. It's just going to speed things up. That's only going to save time and money.
Yeah, I completely echo what Dan said, and I just think working in operations, working in project management, your biggest enemy is time, right? You're always up against a clock, you're always facing a deadline, and I think in this instance, being able to work together with the Sequin team, with an Unreal developer team, what that allowed us to do was push further in the ways that we could modify the model in an engaging way, and also kind of build upon client requests that were coming up kind of as we were showing them progress, right? It was like, why don't we add this feature here, right? Whereas if we had just been engaged formally with the client without Sequin, you would have had way less time, right? So you wouldn't really have as much flexibility with the model to add some of the pretty key features that you're seeing here. So I think it's just an efficiency model that saves time, saves money, and ultimately allows you to be much more creative with what you're pushing out. It just gives you far more opportunities to really test the boundaries and trial and error some of the things that you maybe wouldn't have gotten to before. So really important.
And then I think the future for these kinds of products is also worth really digging into. When we conceptualized this, we knew that it was going to be delivered over an app. Obviously, that's becoming quite common. They didn't actually know what to do with this app, and they were going to redesign the app as a delivery vehicle for the actual launch of the content. So when we propose this campus with, spaces that you can locate yourself in as a viewer, and the fact that we were creating a digital asset, an Unreal Engine asset, we proposed that through novel app experiences, you could actually use this environment in more creative ways than just showing clips between a game or analysis or commentary. But if you pair it with experiences in the UI of the actual GeoCinema app, perhaps there are collectible tokens that can be redeemed for people who watch ongoing broadcasts successively. Perhaps that shows up in a virtual trophy room that you could engage in as an app in a 360 experience. There's an underlying architecture facilitated by the fact that it is an over-the-top delivery that pairs with the broad, ambitious thinking of the broadcast space as a campus. And it's something that is not an application in this first iteration, but there is a novelty to the idea that perhaps this entire arena could be lifted off its pier and transported to, another sporting event later, in the future somewhere else. It's a sense of place that is maintained through the design aesthetic that translates because the people are not just seeing it, they are experiencing it through this app. And that's kind of the bigger picture that these technologies can lead us to. It's not necessarily just about, oh, we don't have to do a physical build out. It's about the engagement of the viewer, and as you know, the proliferation of all these different places for your attention compete. It's big ideas like Hero Park that are going to really make the difference and move the needle for people who honestly just want to watch cricket, and they want to feel like they're getting something new while they're seeing cricket. And ultimately, that's what gets people to come back.
Just in terms of brand identity, which feels quite tied to these large-scale arenas, right? GeoCinema is creating a brand new platform that is mostly mobile, but also able to stream. But we're giving them the opportunity to create a home base, right? For their clientele to keep visiting and to find in current but also future iterations, right? The point of having an arena is that you can easily add a boating house, you can easily add tennis courts, and you can maintain architecture and design influence throughout new spaces that make sure that your audience know where you are, right? Your home base is in GeoCinema. Maybe you're now in San Diego instead of the coast of Mumbai, but you have something that tracks through all of the different iterations that you're coming up with based off of what you're covering, right? It could be the Olympics, it could be the cricket league, but I think this offers a really good example of a branding project, and I mean, so much more than that, but really something that can tie you into the network and keep you close to them as you're watching the various programming, of which there is much.
I mean, that's a perfect segue too, because the other problem this solves for this specific client is they're covering live sporting events in India, where there is a ton of different languages for your different regional audiences. So what they need to do is run concurrent broadcasts, but obviously you can't have 20 of the same physically built out studios. So you have 5 or 6 virtual production studios that you can run concurrently, but your graphics and your presenter are in different languages. That's an efficiency solution that Virtual actually provided and is a major catalyst for the structure that this project took from the origination. It's a facilities workflow operations problem that allows them to capture 150% more audience just because their facility can support it. And the graphics are cohesive and not indistinct between those individual broadcasts. I'm aware that we've been talking for a while. I think if there are any questions or really any final thoughts from Sequin or Clickspring, we're around. We obviously like to talk about this stuff. We're a Unilumin partner, so we'll be here if this tickles your fancy. Meanwhile, please enjoy more of the video. But I don't know, Dan, any closing words to?
I did actually just want to talk a little bit about the Viacom 18 team. So this was a very ambitious project, and like I talked about, the campus is not just this huge campus, but it's alive. The water is moving, and there are people who are moving around inside of the campus. So during the live broadcast, there are virtual people who are moving around, they're cheering. So it doesn't just feel like a flat, empty complex, a flat, empty area that was built out. It's felt alive. I feel like it was a real thing. And all of that is very ambitious. It's great. It also makes everything we're doing very heavy. It makes giant files that slow down, cause performance issues. So being able to talk to the Viacom 18 team, and I'll say Rakesh and Sandeep, were the 2 main people who we dealt with, who are amazing, incredibly smart, incredibly great guys to work with. Just being able to go to them and say, here's what we're seeing, what is important, what's not important, where can we cheat a little bit to try to get the performance up, and for them to be able to say, that's a little less important, yes, you can do that, or no, this is super important, please don't change that, and being able to talk to them and work through them with that was so important to, again, not slow down and have them say, well, we'll come back to you, we're not sure, or give us a wrong answer, and change it later. Like, just the efficiency with which they worked was just incredible and was able to pull this off. And like they've been saying, because it's this living complex, you can do a lot with it. You can add pieces to it. You can move it somewhere else, or you can take it into another realm. It's metaverse inspired. You can take it online. You can put it a different version into other shows, put it on other networks. This is something that's recognizable now, that when the audience tunes in, they're going to know exactly where they are, what channel they're on. What we're doing here is this the sports coming out of the GeoCinema complex. So that part of it is so important, that this is a little bit like showing the promise of virtual production. That now you have this complex, you've built out this complex, you can add things to it, you can do other things with it. It exists virtually, so it's not a building that you need to try to pick up and move or do something else with. This exists as physical sets and as virtual sets, so that you can have it be your world, you can have it be your branding and do various different things with it. And it really is a testament to both the Viacom 18 team for thinking through this and having this ambition, and not just the ambition, but the technical skill and the knowledge and the wherewithal to figure out, we have this ambitious project, how is exactly going to work? And then also with Clickspring, to work with them to build it out in a logical way that makes sense and looks awesome. You can see how beautiful it is. Just all of that together, that synergy really helped bring this together, and not just as a finished product, it's great, but also something that we're hoping to build on in the future.
That was well put. Anything else? Well, I think, come up and talk to us. We would love to meet you guys. If there's anything that sounds like it could be an avenue into some new creative pursuits. Like I said, we're with Clickspring Design and Sequin AR.